They don't want you to remember this, not because it's forgotten, but because it was never meant to be known. 4 million years ago, something walked this earth, half beast, half ancestor. Something not quite human, but never entirely animal. It wasn't just survival, it was domination, and it began with a lie. They told you evolution was slow, gradual, a gentle arc from ape to man. But that's not what the bones say. The bones tell a story of eruption, not evolution, of strange, sudden leaps in brain size, of upright creatures whose hands could grasp, crush, carve, of a species that should not have existed, but did. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the truth screaming from the sediment. We were not alone. We were never alone. Imagine Africa, 4 million years ago. No cities, no names, just endless sky and scorched savanna. Yet something out there was watching the stars, with eyes full of thought, not the slow gaze of a grazing beast, but the cold, calculating stare of a predator planning what would come next. Australopithecus afarensis, our supposed ancestor, walked on 2 legs, but her skeleton says more than that. She wasn't just evolving, she was being shaped. Her hips, her spine, her teeth, modifications that don't appear gradually, but all at once in the fossil record. As if something intervened, as if the blueprint of the beast was being overwritten in secret. And then, the hands. Hands that didn't just grip trees. They crafted. They carved. Stone tools appear at 3.3 million years, but not scattered, organized, repeated, sophisticated. Tell me, what animal accidentally invents the blade? The cut marks on bones tell their own tale. Bones stripped clean, cracked open for marrow. This wasn't a species surviving. It was one learning to dominate, to kill more efficiently, to consume the living and the dead. And the silence. It wasn't ignorance. It was ritual. Here's what they don't want you to ask. Why did we stand upright? They'll say it was to carry food, to see predators in the grass, but the truth is darker. We stood up not to survive, but to rise above, to become something else, to transform. Look at a lion, a wolf. They kill, but they do not plan cities. They do not sculpt gods. But we did, and that seed was planted long before history began. Why do you think we fear the dark? Why does every culture have myths of watchers in the forest, of beings who came from the sky? It's not superstition, it's ancestral memory, encoded terror. There were things older than us, things stronger than us, and somehow, we became them. They've buried this history under sand and ridicule. Call it pseudoscience, myth, fantasy, but when you dig past the textbooks, you'll find it. Strange footprints, millions of years too early, bones that don't match anything, tools in the wrong layers, skulls that seem human, but aren't. And in every single case, they say the same thing. We don't know what it means. Let's move on. Move on, or stay asleep. Because once you start asking questions about the origin of man, you start finding things you're not supposed to find. Why did brain size triple in less than 1 million years? Why do we dream of flying? Why do we build temples to beings with animal heads and human bodies? These aren't fantasies. They're recollections. They say Homo habilis came next, handyman, another label, another cage. But those bones don't tell the story of some dull hominid fumbling with sticks. They show something with intention, with pattern recognition, with language forming in its throat. You can almost hear it, in the rhythm of tools, the spacing of fire pits, the alignment of bones around sleeping circles. Primitive? No, this was warfare against nature, against time, and eventually against each other. They were selecting, culling, refining something ancient into something terrifyingly modern. Look at the skull of Australopithecus, then look at your own in a mirror. Same jawline, same orbital structure, same fire behind the eyes. You carry them in your blood. You carry what they did, the dominance, the silence, the memory of something sacred and violated. And now, you're waking up. If you've made it this far, you're not here by accident. You've always felt it, the pull, the suspicion that there was something before civilization, before kings, before the gods. You were right. Halfway down the spiral now. Don't stop. The blood memory of fire and shadow. They say we evolved from hunger. But what if it wasn't hunger that drove us? What if it was obsession? 4 million years ago, fire didn't just cook meat, it forged minds. It wasn't just warmth, it was a weapon, a symbol, an altar, and the creatures who lit it knew something no beast had ever dared to know. That the world could be altered, that power could be taken, that survival was no longer enough. Fire taught us that the earth could be bent to will, and will is where the manipulation began. We weren't meant to find fire. The first sparks weren't accidents. They were offerings, gifts, or maybe tests. Because with fire came change, real change. Neurological rewiring, waves of new proteins, new behaviors, from raw meat to cooked, from cold nights to protected sleep, from fear to control. And in that control came whispers, the kind of whispers that crawl in your mind when your eyes are closed, the kind that say, you are not just surviving, you are meant to rule. That's the first moment man became something else, but it came with a cost. Let me show you what they hide behind polite words like adaptation. Teeth changed, hands narrowed, hips twisted, but so did spirit. The daily life of early man wasn't a peaceful hunt for berries. It was obsession, ritual, and hierarchy. There were no calendars, yet they tracked. Ked the moon. No language, yet they passed messages. No priesthood, yet they built shrines to the sky. And the strong didn't just lead, they marked, scarred, silenced. The first hierarchies weren't political, they were genetic. Some were favored, others weren't. And in caves, under flickering torchlight, that division grew teeth. Think about it. How did symbolism emerge in the dark? Why would a creature scratch animals into a cave wall unless it meant something? Why paint hands in blood and ochre on stone unless it was a mark of passage? Because this wasn't just survival. This was initiation. They were forging more than tools. They were forging identity. And identity is power. Now ask yourself, who taught them? Because when you look close, you see the fingerprints. Cave art placed precisely on magnetic anomaly lines. Burial patterns aligned to stars. Shamans appearing in every ancient culture at the same evolutionary depth. Coincidence or contact? They'll call it religion, but it was never just belief. It was instruction. And someone, or something, was giving the lesson. By 2.8 million years ago, the genus Homo emerges. Homo habilis, Homo erectus, each leap faster, smarter, more refined. But if evolution is random, why the pattern? Why the sudden mastery of fire? Why the appearance of memory, empathy, strategy? It wasn't just natural, it was intentional. A refinement, an engineering, like a machine being tested again and again until finally it obeys. And now, you are that machine. You are the result of selective trauma. You inherited their fears, their hungers, their visions. Why do you still dream of being chased? Why do you still fear the woods? Why do you wake and feel something missing, as if the real you is buried beneath the surface? Because that's exactly where they left him. Let me take you deeper. We didn't build civilization. We copied it. All across the earth, we find traces of older orders, stone tools beneath newer stone, ritual burials before religion, cities swallowed by soil before history even began.